using those for the most part. We're going to be using a mouse, hopefully. Actually, that's a good question. Is everyone here like? Do people have mice, or are they using trackpads? If you're using trackpads, you're gonna have a slightly harder time. And these buttons are pretty useful to you.
I have like a white.
You have a was that a wireless mouse? It cut you off a little there, Jack, but that's solid. Okay. Um, well, yeah. So these buttons are useful to you if you have a trackpad. Um, So top right of Blender by default is this window here called the outliner. It's this is pretty common in a lot of programs out there, and I can show you in Blender, like this outliner here. It's this little thing on the top right. It holds everything that's in our world. So if I duplicate this like cube a bunch of times, it's all in there. You can make folders and stuff. Not super important. I just want people to be aware of it. Um, the most important window, most likely, is this. It sits on the right side of Blender. It's this big panel over here, and this contains it is context sensitive, which means that if I have like an object selected, it's going to give me different stuff based on what I have selected. So I have a cube selected, I have different stuff. I have a this empty over here selected, different stuff, and all these tabs um they're significant. We'll get to them, but they're significant. We won't really be going into much detail about that today. So, um, this is good. Yeah, these are miscellaneous to discuss. I'm not going to go over them, but my point is, if you're curious about these buttons up top, like these buttons, they're important, but they're not super important. We're not going to get to them yet. We're going to get to them a little bit later once we're doing stuff hands-on. Um, These are somewhat important, however. Uh, don't worry about the ones that are redded out. Just focus on the white ones here. Edit overlays, toggle X-ray, solid, and wireframe. So in here, that's this button right here lets you switch to wireframe mode. Lets you like see through stuff if you have a really complex 3D model open. Like say I've got this raptor over here, and the buttons just moved because this was made on an older version of Blender, but that's wireframe. This one over here lets you toggle all the like little visual cues that Blender is giving you. So yeah, just worth being vaguely familiar with. I know I'm going pretty quickly here. Um, and so this screen, I'm gonna leave this screen up a bit. I want you guys, if you have Blender open, I would like people to try these different buttons. Open Blender and hit G while you have like a cube selected. Selection is just left clicking. So if you open up Blender and you hit I'm just gonna I can probably put Blender over here, make it really small. Um, yeah, if you do Shift C, no matter where you are in the world, it'll recenter your view. If you use middle mouse button, holding down middle mouse button is what lets me twist around the view as I'm doing right now. If I scroll, it lets me zoom in and out. If I hold down shift and push down middle mouse button, it lets me pan. So those are the most key controls there. Middle mouse button to rotate around, shift middle mouse button to pan, and scroll to zoom in and out. Um, when you pan, it kind of changes the center of rotation of your vision. So see, now we're rotating around this weird arbitrary point above our jet. And Shift C recenters that point of rotation to the center of mass of all the objects in your world. But you don't need to worry about that. G, what does G do? It lets you grab. There's the jet. I'm grabbing the jet. All of its little parts are broken because they're connected to some animation. Don't worry about it. R lets me rotate. Someone left. S lets me scale. So I'm I'm gonna wait until I get a heads up from some people. Yeah, I can drop you guys the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint's like 200 something megabytes, so it's gonna be PPTX format. It's not gonna be a Google Drive PowerPoint, unfortunately. But yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have a number of PowerPoints that I can disseminate. I think Alan has seen them, but he's in the general chat. Um, so yeah, XYZ, I think Discord is 8 megabytes. Yeah, I might need to Google Drive. Um, I have a ton of PowerPoints that I would be more than happy to provide. Now, don't worry about recording because I guess the PowerPoint's pretty self-explanatory for the most part. But it's up to you. Um, It's been fine for the past 5 minutes. Dope. Okay. So I mean, honestly, it'd be pretty cool if a lot of other people shared their screens. We could have like that giant panel open of people just screen sharing and exploring around Blender. I these PowerPoints are from a time that I ran a game development club at my high school, and so that like what I would do is I'd walk around and watch the kids like follow through and try this stuff while I presented. So like if you it would be cool if people shared their screens, I guess. I don't know if everyone knows how to do that or if anyone cares to. That's fine. But yup. Uh, so I'm just gonna wait a bit. I'll move on at like let's say 7:23. I'll give you guys like another 2-3 minutes to play around with these controls. Um, Shift A is a big one. Shift A adds objects. When you do Shift A, you get this big menu right here. And this menu, I know Discord's not that crisp, so you probably can't read it super well. But the point is, um, this menu has all sorts of miscellaneous object types inside of it. You'll see like armature, lattice, empty, image, light probe. Like these are all not meshes. There's it's important to make that distinction early on. There's meshes and there are objects, and objects are like object is a very general term. Anything in Blender that's like a discrete like it's there like this for example this jet here. This jet is multiple parts, multiple detached parts. They're not necessarily attached to each other. However, they're still part of the same object, and they are all it's all one mesh object. Let me close that. So it's a mesh. It has vertices. I can manipulate these vertices. I can I can manipulate these edges. That's a mesh. All of these other things like curve and stuff, that's not. It looks like a circle. You might be thinking, okay, that's just a bunch of points in a circle, but no, Blender handles different data types. So this is a NURBS curve, which is like a Bezier curve, but with no time domain. If anyone knows the math behind those, but don't worry about it. Just point is different data types. Don't worry about them. Just yeah, XYZ. This is valuable as well. So this slide right here is like one of the most valuable slides today. Like you need to get comfortable, particularly with GRS and XYZ. These are like the most frequently used keybinds. If I add a cube here and if I press G, I'm now moving it arbitrarily in 3D space. And if I press G and then I press X, now it's constrained to the X axis. If I press Y, it's constrained to the Y axis. If I press Z, Z axis. If I press R to rotate it, I'm rotating it around the vector from my screen to the cube. I'm rotating it around like a point that like it's like a line coming out of my face, and I'm spinning it around. I don't know if you guys have my video open on the side, but I'm doing the thing with my arm. You're rotating it around a line coming from your perspective to the cube. If I press R and then X, I just hit X on my keyboard. I'm now rotating it around the X axis. It gets better. I can now type 90, and I've just rotated it 90 degrees, and you can actually see where that it lets you see what you're typing towards the bottom left of your screen. I'm sure Discord is crunching that, and I don't have Nitro, which is unfortunate, but um near the like bottom left of the screen, if I can zoom it in here. uh right here. When I typed 20, it shows that near the bottom left of the screen as such. So you can rotate things by like set amounts. I can scale things on a particular axis by a set amount. I can be like SX2, SX, SZ5. I've now scaled this cube 5 times on the Z axis. These are really important. This XYZ stuff, it's like the language of Blender. Like it's ubiquitous. Every time, no matter where you are in Blender, if you're moving something, if you're extruding something, whatever operation you're doing, if you hit X, Y, or Z, it's going to constrain it to that axis. So, all right, I'm gonna move along. So yeah, any questions? I am gonna pause now. I mean, I know this is one of those situations where it's like you have to know what to ask, and I just have not covered anywhere near enough. So like, but if anyone has any questions, I'm just gonna pause and take that as a Take that as a no. Okay. All right. Selection. I know lots of text on this slide. It doesn't look pretty. Left clicking is the select button. It works everywhere in Blender. It used to be right click, not anymore. It was pretty unorthodox, but left clicking and dragging is box select. That's convenient. So if I go to Blender right now and I want to select my plane and that, I just left click and drag out of empty space and I box select. There's also a keybind for that. It's Control B. I wouldn't bother with Control B. Um, C is the button for circle select. What is circle select? It lets me do this. I can like use a circle to select an area. I can say I can go to my jet over here and I can select what's underneath the circle in terms of vertices. Circle select. Selection is a pretty critical concept. I know it's like really basic stuff right now, but there's so many times in Blender where you're in a position where one click could save you about 2 minutes of going in a circle and clicking on 30 different points. And well, you'll probably run into an example of that. Um, Whenever you are engaged in an action in Blender, right-clicking cancels it. That's a good one. So yeah, whenever you're like, if you're circle selecting and you right-click, it cancels. If you're box selecting and you right-click, it's gonna cancel. Like if I right-click. Um, so yeah, right-clicking like cancels the action that you're in. A selects everything. Double tapping A quickly deselects everything. Whatever. Not not super important. Let me see if I can't find something more interesting to do here. Uh, yeah, this is a good one. Oh boy. This is a more interesting project with a lot of different parts. Uh, so we can just sort of look at something that's more complex. I know you guys don't have this on your Blender, but the reason I'm doing this is so it doesn't have multiple parts actually, so don't worry about that. Let's move on with the PowerPoint, shall we? So yeah, what I want you to take from this is circle select C, box select either click and drag or press B or press Control B. It doesn't make a difference. And A double tap to deselect everything. A to select everything. Crucial keybinds. I don't expect you to memorize them, but you're gonna find yourself using them sooner or later. So yeah, here's circle select. Um, just yeah, you can see how that's kind of convenient. Uh, Box select, right? You just click and drag. Transforming and constraining. We talked about this. Um, you can constrain across an X, Y, or Z axis. Um, a very crucial concept to 3D game development is that whenever you press or no, sorry, not whenever you press X, Y, and Z should be associated with red, green, and blue in your head. If you can make those associations, that's really important. I know like a lot of people look at like Y as blue for some reason, but no, X, Y, Z, red, green, blue. That is a pretty critical concept and one that is universal to a lot of different concepts, whether it's shaders, whether it's the Blender user interface, right? Like this red line here, this red line is the X-axis. That green line, Y-axis, and Z is the vertical axis. Very, very important to understand that. Um, you can yeah, so you can directly type transformation units. Just important reminder, right? So you press S and then you do 2. Oh, uh this is a different situation because I have a button pressed here somewhere that's preventing me from manipulating those. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna open a new Blender window. um yeah, so S2, twice the size. S 4.5, 4.5 times the size. R 20, we rotated it 20 degrees on the axis from my perspective to the cube. RX 30, 30 degrees on the x-axis. We're rotating it 30 degrees on the x-axis. And then I hit enter, or I left click to like confirm the operation I just did. I guess that's a way to think. Oh, you're colorblind. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon. that is that is mighty unfortunate. Blender has a colorblind mode, I think. If you go to File, uh, or Edit Preferences, I believe in here, there is a colorblind thing somewhere in here. Somewhere in here. Um, Ooh, there's a Blender dark theme. Oh, ew. Oh God. Okay, we were on the dark theme. Oh Lord. Uh, but yeah, I know for a fact that there's some sort of. Oh, good. Okay, that's good, Brandon. Um, yeah. So just showing off like constraining. Uh, a bit more about viewport. Yeah. This is important. Okay. So this is just to make your life easier. Blender by default has these turned off. It's a couple of features. So when we make a new cube in Blender, when we make a new open a new file, there's always a default cube there. If you ever go on like the Blender subreddit, you're gonna see memes about the default cube. A lot of people have lately gotten into a trend of making art out of the default cube, and it's a pretty humorous thing in my opinion. But um, you're gonna see there's this arrow up here. This arrow. When you click this arrow, a drop down comes up, and that drop down has a bunch of different things in it. But most importantly, this little checkbox right here for shadow, as well as this checkbox for cavity. Uh, they turn on some highlighting that makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. Let's see what effect that has on a more complex 3D model. Boba.blend. I have a feeling this is an old animation that I made. Let me see. Yeah, it is. Okay. And because it's made on an older version of Blender, the thing is on the bottom of the screen, but it doesn't make a difference. So, see when I check, oh, the scale is off as well. Let me just there we go. Notice the effect that this had. If I turn off cavity, cavity on, cavity off. What cavity is doing is it's taking a curvature map of the screen and then highlighting places that have high curvature and blackening places that have low curvature. It's a very valuable visual tool for being able to see like what's popping out and what is like popping in, I guess. Like you can see these black edges there, those white edges, and then shadow is just it's a shadow. It's a random shadow that I can change the direction of. It's arbitrary. It doesn't have anything to do with the environment or like what you're exporting. It's just there to help you visualize what you're doing in Blender. Um, shadow, cavity. Cavity has a little drop down here where you can do screen space or world space. World space, this is a concept that you'd be more familiar with if you do a Unity or Unreal Engine or anything like that. But screen space stuff is like an operation that's performed on the pixels of your display. World space stuff is it takes more 3D stuff into effect, I guess, like into account. At the end of the day, I think world space still ends up it's just the units in which it performs this. So if we're in strictly world space units, because this world is actually like really big, like this is like thousands of kilometers across because I broke the scaling settings, it has nearly no effect. Whereas in screen space, it's going to have a consistent effect no matter how big or small the world is. You can see it's being a bit glitchy. Anyways, that's what I wanted you to take away from that. That drop down and then the shadow and the cavity thing. I say ambient occlusion here because ambient occlusion is technically it's a pretty similar shader. That's a thing that you know if you ever play a video game and you can go to your graphics settings, ambient occlusion is one of those settings. That's basically what we're turning on here. Um, Oh yeah, and Z, pressing Z. When you press Z, you get this little radial menu. You can just be like wireframe. And that's the same as clicking down here on one of these four circles. You can see there's a lot more to these than you thought. There's like little this was just it was an old project. I'm not going to explain it. Material preview. This is what yeah, this is what the materials actually look like. And if I go to rendered, now my voice might start breaking up on Blender because my computer's firing photons and my graphics card is struggling to handle the video feed. But that's what, yeah. So back to solid. Hopefully my voice just uncrunched a little bit, but yeah. Um, okay. Everything looks better with shading. Yeah, so here's that shading again, right? Turning off cavity and shadow looks really nasty. You don't necessarily know what's on top or on the bottom. Cavity and shadow on, you really have a much better idea of what you're looking at and like where it lets you see depth, right? Any last questions? So this is like the first half of the meeting done. Um, any questions? I'm gonna ask some review questions now that'll hopefully make everyone. I want everyone to unmute. Honestly, it'd be kind of fun. Like I love it more when people are. Yeah, yeah, like social, back and forth. I don't know. It is what it is. But someone asked, I can't find anything too conclusive with my bad searches, but you can customize the theming. Yeah, yeah, definitely customizable, but I'm not. Yeah, I thought it had a colorblind feature. Anyways, review. So, what data makes up a 3D model? Can anyone name all the metadata? It'd be pretty interesting.
Let's take a
Now,
stab at this. Material IDs. You got the vertex
yes.
color as well. Shit, that's all I remember.
So, material
Uh,
IDs.
Material ID, vertex color. UV map. Is that a part of the
Yes.
meta?
Yeah. That's important metadata. Yeah, and then normals. Normals is the last one. Normals
Normals is
material.
meta. Oh, it is.
It
Yes.
it is. It's stored on the mesh. It is stored on the mesh
Yes. For
file.
some reason, I thought that it was calculated every single time. That
No,
is the
well,
worst thing to do.
when you export a file into Unreal Engine, it'll tell you, do you want to recalculate the normals or do you want to take the ones that came with the file? And I think Unity probably does a similar thing.
Yeah, there's a
That's
checkbox.
that's another thing. What file format are we exporting in? Does anyone remember? It's from the slide with the minion.
Uh, so it's
Uh,
like a
no, not dot blend is the one that you save the Blender project as.
it
But
starts with like a F.
FBX.
FBX,
Yeah.
FBX. Yup. Uh, oh, that's not a point that I really covered. Um, yeah, do smooth normals add more detail? When we looked at those smooth normals versus rough normals, like they don't add any extra geometry. Even though it creates a smooth surface, like you don't need to have infinite points for it to look like a smooth surface. And that's a big concept in optimization. Like if you ever zoom in on like I don't know, a cable in a video game, like a long, like cylindrical, thin cable, if you zoom in enough and look at it from the right angle, you'll notice it might literally just be a cube. Like its cross section might be a square, or it might be an octagon or something. But it's not going to be like a million points because that's like a poor allocation of resources. So instead, we use smooth normals to make it look like it's circular, even though it's less than that. What keys rotate, scale, and grab? This is pretty self-explanatory right here. I hope
S and G.
R, S, and G. Yep. Um, and then how do you circle select? C, or you click that selection button. I'm looking at your stream right now, Jack. I see a lot of people have their streams opening up. That makes me quite happy. um,
Yeah, I
can I
just got off of my phone and went straight to my laptop.
dope. I see Brandon is what is that? Did you bisect that? Or is that just
It is
a
a dodecahedron.
Oh, you added a dodecahedron. Cool. Awesome. Uh, and then how do you select all? You press A. It's pretty, yeah. Um, how do you recenter your view? That's a big one. Like a lot of people will be like, "Oh my God, I zoomed out too far and I lost where I was working. I can't see anything. What's going on?" Shift C. Shift C. It's a it's a weird keybind, but Shift C. You gotta remember it. In some other programs, it'll be F. It's not F in Blender. I don't think it is. That might work. But I don't think so. How do you rotate your view? Middle mouse button.
F does not work.
F does not work. Okay, good. Yeah, ZBrush, I think it's F. Maya and 3ds Max, I think it's F, but not
Is
Blender.
it F to recenter? Or is it F to focus?
I mean, I think it fundamentally they're pretty.
Yeah, your object's always in the middle in those, right?
Yeah. That's true. Because you're working on one object at a time. Whereas Blender, you can have lots and lots of objects. Oh, orthographic versus perspective view. Yeah, that's a concept. I didn't cover that. So looking at Blender, if I let me open up a new file, or let me open up, um, geez, I'm gonna open up like something interesting. Let's see. Creative software. It's my, uh, KG9. Actually, Starbucks. That's a good one. This is a Starbucks cup. Super simple model, but a very good like explanation of how to do a model like to production quality. So when you let me there we go. So orthographic view versus perspective view. See these little buttons on the top right here? These buttons, this one right here, if you don't have a number pad, because it normally would be numpad 5, But if you don't have a number pad, you just hit that, and now look at that, right? Really, kind of confusing. There's no vanishing point. This is like isometric. Orthographic is what it's called. There's no perspective. There's no depth. If I look at the cup from directly above, perfect circle. If I look at it from the side, perfectly, I have like the exact profile of the cup. Whereas if I switch to perspective view, it's you see the effect that has. So this is convenient for certain situations, but it's not necessarily just worth noting. That little grid right here switches from like, you turn depth on or off when you have, yeah. Okay. So how do you recenter? Shift C, panning, orthographic view. Yeah, lining up things from the side and generally making sure that things are flat by looking at them sideways is where orthographic view is pretty convenient. How do you turn on shadows?
Actually, I had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. Perfect.
Sorry for interrupting. So one thing I realized is whenever I press like Shift C, sometimes it doesn't like recenter towards like the origin. It's almost like offsetted. Is that like
Yes.
what's
So
that all
what
about?
it's doing is it's finding the orthocenter of every object in your world, and by default you have a lamp and a camera in your world. That's what that like vertical bar with the black thing is, as well as the other black thing in your world. Like, do you see that? You see that? I'm looking at your stream right now, Jack, and you've got the camera. The camera's the weird triangular, like, yeah, that thing. That's a camera. Press X. Press X and you can delete it. And now do Shift C, and you'll notice that it should center somewhere between the. It'll find a spot that's somewhere between the lamp and the, yeah. So that black circle thing is it's a lamp. But you got to select it to delete it. I have a feeling you're using a trackpad. I can tell it's being a little. Select it. You gotta click on it to delete it.
Actually, I'm actually using the wireless mouse.
Oh, it's having a bit of a.
There you go.
Or that might be the Discord stream actually. Discord does that sometimes where the stream is really twitchy. Don't worry about it.
Oh shoot. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is really zoomed in.
um So how do we turn on shadows in the viewport? It's that little drop down on the top right. It's that little drop down to the right of the like 4 spheres or circles. You hit that drop down. It's, yep, and then you hit cavity or shadows, and those help a lot. So yeah, your homework. I used to give this to my students. So yeah. I have a Quizlet, I guess, but I'm not going to share that. I will share this PowerPoint. Let's skip into the next one, shall we? We'll start with actually doing some 3D modeling that goes beyond just moving cubes around. This was all the like critical information you need to begin with, but in the next 15 minutes, hopefully, we'll at least give you a taste of like how to actually make something that's more complex than a cube, how to add new geometry that isn't just a prefabricated shape. So I'll close this down, and I'll share that after the meeting. I will 100% share that later. And let's get started.
Sorry to interrupt, but before
Yeah.
we do this,
Yes.
just want to let everyone know you have to change a few settings because in
Ooh.
Blender, if you have like a graphics card in your computer, by default Blender will use your processor to render everything, and that's super slow.
Well, we're not using it for rendering though. We're not using it for rendering, so that's
Well,
not too
if
important.
you want to look at it,
Yeah,
want to look pretty.
right. Well, so Blender, to elaborate on that, Blender has a couple different ways that it renders things. The one way is like the RTX way, right? Bouncing photons around. Blender refers to that as its cycles rendering engine. The name of that is cycles. Blender has a now deprecated old rendering engine that it's still, I think, on by default, maybe, called Blender
It is.
Render.
I don't think it's there anymore. I checked.
Oh, okay. And then there's a real-time rendering engine, which real-time rendering doesn't involve bouncing photons around or doing ray tracing. Real-time rendering is like what Unreal Engine does. It's rasterization. It's doing linear algebra to take the vectors of the geometry and put them on your screen. That Blender calls that Eevee. And so when you switch to rendered mode, it'll be using Eevee, and it's powerful, but it's not necessary because in Blender we'll never really be working with materials. We'll never be working with the complex, colorful stuff. All we usually care about in Blender is the geometry. But yes, if you switch to rendered mode, and you want some like clean lighting and reflections and stuff, it would be important to make sure that it's running on your graphics card. And but that's nothing to worry about quite yet. But yes, good. Thank you for bringing that one up, Trevor. So yeah, topics. So this next PowerPoint here, we're going really fast. If you guys are following around, good for you. Like, or following along. I mean, so I feel like I've been moving pretty quickly, but we got to understand how Blender groups data, like what a mesh is and what an object is. Navigating edit mode. Edit mode is the center of 3D modeling in Blender. When you have an object selected or a mesh type object selected and you hit tab, it sends you to edit mode. We'll get to that in a second. Undoing your actions. Blender by default holds something like 26 undos, I think, and you can always redo unless you change something down the undo tree. So just some basic stuff, and then extrusion, loop cuts, and subdivision. Those are like the three horsemen of 3D modeling, I guess. Those are like the main operations we'll be doing. So quick review. Oh yeah, we just covered this. This was like, I have these meetings weekly normally, so yeah, here we go. Preliminary info. What we are making in Blender is called a mesh. In Unreal Engine or in Unity or in like these big game engines, you'll hear it referred to as a static mesh. Um, a mesh, a static mesh, these terms are synonymous. An object is not always a mesh, but a mesh is like an object. These are all examples of different data types that Blender handles. I see I select a curve there. Curves, I showed you that earlier. Those are metaballs. They look like water droplets. They like really interact in interesting ways. They're using an algorithm called cube marching. That's a sound source. That's an empty. That's a camera. You'll see a camera by default in your world. You can delete it. To delete it, you select it by clicking on it and then hitting X to delete. X is the universal delete button in Blender. The delete key works too. So we're just working with 3D meshes. We're not touching those. Some important concepts. A mesh object can have disconnected parts. So just because parts are disconnected doesn't mean that they're multiple meshes. They're still part of the same like mesh object. Multiple, and then here's an example of multiple disconnected objects. So when we're in object mode, I can select them. Like, see, this is a spotlight over here that's moving around. I animated that a while back, and yeah, you can just click on like different parts and see that they're. Oh, oof, broken GIF. That'll happen.
Oof.
Yeah, it's Google Drive does not like GIFs that get close to 50 megabytes. Its upload cap is 50 megabytes, and for some reason sometimes they just break down at like if you upload a 48 megabyte one, like within a day or something, like some arbitrary unit of time will pass, and then or a period of time.
Actually, I was saying oof because you called it a GIF. That caught me off guard.
They are GIFs, yeah. So these are all GIFs. That's the way that you get them into Google Drive so that they're auto playing the way that they are. But this is big here. This is big. Edit mode is the mode. This is the go-to mode. Click on your object, everybody. Click on your like cube or your cone or whatever. I see Brandon's got a cone. I think. Click on a mesh and top left hit edit mode. Go to where it says object mode all the way on the top left and hit edit mode. And then you will be looking at the vertices of that mesh. This is where 3D modeling happens. It happens in edit mode. It's where you manipulate the vertices. So yeah, edit mode lets you manipulate geometry more than just simple transformation. In fact, in general, you don't even want to touch rotating, scaling, or grabbing in object mode because those translations and transformations they're like the rotation that you perform in object mode exists on a separate layer, and when you export, that rotation isn't preserved. Like I don't know how else to describe it. Like if I scale something up in object mode, like a human head, and then I program it or I go and edit it and manipulate it, and then go back to object mode and export it. It'll export it like scaled down. It doesn't preserve the things that you do in object mode, only edit mode. So edit mode lets you select specific vertices, edges, and faces. Okay, so here's me in edit mode going around and clicking on this cube. You can see I go top left, I click that little icon. Now we're in edge select mode, so I can select edges. I can select them in wireframe mode. And then if I click that face icon, I can select faces. So yeah, Brandon, I see you. There, that works. That works. And you can do edit mode. Yep. And then these three little icons let you decide what exactly you're selecting. Just clicking lets you select one. Circle select works in here as well, like pressing C and selecting a ton. Box selecting, holding down Shift to select multiple. That's an important concept. Hold down Shift to select multiple. And if you want to deselect something, I think you hold Control to deselect it while having like the other ones still selected. Like if you left click without holding anything, it'll deselect everything and select just the thing you just left clicked. But if you have multiple things selected, multiple edges, and then you hold down Control, you can just remove one of them from the selection. I guess is what I'm getting at. So yeah, vertex select, edge select, face select. You can actually switch between these really quickly by pressing 1, 2, 3 on your keyboard, and that'll let you switch between them really quickly. So yeah, vertex select, edge select, face select. Welcome, Ranger. um, so yeah, here's the monkey in Blender. You can actually add this to your world by doing Shift A, Mesh, and then I think it's called Suzanne. But yeah, same selection types still work. And then extrusion. This is big. This is big. Extrusion is like literally half of the stuff that you're going to be doing in Blender is extruding, and you extrude by pressing E, and then Alt E will give you more options with how to extrude. Jack, I think your monkey is inside of your cube. There you go. Yep, you just extruded that. Something that a lot of people are going to struggle with early on with extrusion is you're going to have problems because you're going to hit E, and then you're going to right click, and when you press E, two operations happen. One, new geometry is added. Two, you enter grab mode for that new geometry. And three, it constrains it along the normal of the geometry that you're extruding. And that's when you right click, you didn't cancel the geometry being created. It got created. All you canceled was moving it around. So you end up with like overlapping geometry. Like you have like 2 points it's sharing the exact same space. And those are called doubles, and they're like a really common mistake, I guess. And there's automatic ways to correct them. So don't worry about that too much, but you'll notice it creating some very frustrating problems for new 3D modelers. Like everyone struggles with that, and it sucks, but it's something you just got to get used to. Try not to right click when you're in the middle of an extrusion. But yeah, E to extrude. Alt E, if you select multiple surfaces and then do Alt E, you can do extrude along individual normals or something, and it'll like move them separately from each other. So that's what I do over here with the Mohawk monkey all the way on the right. That's what I'm doing. I select
Right.
yeah.
Sorry. So the extrusion is the normal from the viewport, or is it the normal from just like local to that face?
It's the faces. Well, so if I select a chunk of contiguous faces that are all near each other and I press E, it extruded them along the average normal of all of those faces. See, they went down at a bit of an angle. It extruded them all along that normal. Now if I press Alt E and I do extrude individual faces, now each of these is extruding along their own local normal. Make sense? Like so because each of these has its own normal. But yeah, it has nothing to do with the viewport. I see I'm looking at this sideways and I press E. It didn't extrude it along the viewport axis. It extruded it along the Z axis. Well, not the Z axis, the normal. See this one extrudes along its normal. If you want, remember, I told you it's universal. It's absolutely universal when you constrain things. So if I press E and then I press X, see I constrained that along the exact X axis. If I press, if I look at like these top faces right here and I press E, I extrude along the Z axis. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you guys a demonstration of just how powerful extrusion is, because this probably looks silly to you, but it's not. But first we have to clarify what I meant by doubles. Look at what I did here. Watch this GIF. This is important. I press E, and then I right click. I cancel the extrusion. But the geometry is still there. I press G and see it's still there. In fact, it's overlapping with the previous surface. That creates a lot of problems. So when you cancel an extrusion, when you right click after you press E, hit Control Z to undo it. Never, or just left click and let it happen and then hit Control Z to undo it. But just right clicking doesn't delete the geometry that you create when you press E. That's and you know what? You're not going to remember that, and it's going to cause a lot of problems for you, and it's okay because there's ways around that. Oh, you made a frog. Oh my. Nice. I just looked at that, Hannah. Very, very nice. Very nice. Yeah, extruding and canceling and then scaling. This is like the general way to make things. I'm going to show you just how powerful this is in a second. See these right here on my screen? I make these by literally just extruding, right clicking, or extruding, left clicking, and scaling. These like ships that I just watch. I'm 3D modeling it on the bottom left. Literally just extrude, extrude, extrude those two along individual directions, scale along the y-axis, scale along the x-axis, scale along the z-axis, move them on the x-axis. It's so powerful. Literally just here, I'm gonna just do it right now. Here's a cube, right? I go into face select mode, and I can just E, left click, S, E, left click, S, E, left click, S, E, left click, S, E, left click, G, Y. And say I've moved that in. E, scale, X, scale, Y, E, Z, grab, Y, E, Z, grab, Y, select both of these, E, S, X, and now I'm scaling them apart from each other, S, Y, and grab Y. Now we've made a little jet engine hang glider. I did that super quickly. Oh, and see how hard it is to see like what's going on down here without the shading on. If I turn on shading, suddenly this makes a lot more sense to us. There we go. It's a lot easier to see. But that extruding and scaling is so powerful for 3D modeling. I want to give this some wings on the side. Done. I can just E S X S Z E S X S Z grab Y. Boom. We've got like come on, it's sick, right? Like boom, I have a game concept. I have a little jet drone that I can now import into Unity and have it fly around. Like it's awesome what you can do. In fact, here I'm gonna select these, and then I'm gonna E, and then I'm gonna scale them down on the y-axis. Actually, I don't know what I'm trying to do here, to be honest. Yeah, that doesn't quite look good.
Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, you can do some crazy powerful things with just extrusion, like just crazy powerful. I can give this thing like wingtips. I can select this surface and this surface and this surface and this surface, and I can scale these on the y-axis, and then I can ESZ, and then I can scale those on the x-axis and scale them on the y-axis and move those forward or something. I mean, we got a crazy spaceship here. Like it's it's so powerful. It's so powerful. I hope it's 8 o'clock now, and I really hope I've been able to give you guys like an introduction, because like in just literally E and S are the only keybinds you need to accomplish half of the things you want to accomplish. You want to have these really quick, powerful 3D models that look cool. E, S, and then constraining it to different axes. I hope that was a good introduction to Blender. I'm going to stick around for another hour, and I'm going to keep going through my PowerPoint and hopefully interact with you guys more. But if anyone needs to go now, like that's like everything, yeah, I'm gonna take a quick break. Alan, do you have to like call off the meeting now? Is it like a
Yeah,
formal...
I gotta personally go, but thank you
That's fine.
so much for giving this intro workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, no, not a problem. I mean, yeah, we'll take like a 5-minute breather. You know, I'm gonna drink some water, have some almonds. Anyone like, if more people shared their screen, I've been actively watching, by the way. Like Brandon, I see your Taurus with the extruded bits and bobs on it. I see Jack trying to make a jet engine, and I'm proud. Like, good stuff, you guys. Yeah.
Alright. Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, good luck with the rest of it.
Godspeed, Alan.
Thank
See
you,
ya, man.
thank you. I'll see you.
I'm gonna try to save the current recording. Awesome, sick. That's cool.